I want to welcome all of you to this important press event. I am Frank Knapp, President and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. I will be your moderator. In the public debate on voting rights, one voice has not risen to the prominence it deserves. So we are here today to raise that voice, the voice of small businesses that overwhelmingly support the U.S. Senate passing the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and to do so by changing the Senate rules on the filibuster, as has already been done over 160 times. I'm joined by representatives of 4 national organizations, which collectively represent about 500,000 small businesses across this nation. American Sustainable Business Network, Main Street Alliance, Small Business for America's Future, and Small Business Majority. The speakers will make brief remarks on why protecting our democracy is vital to a vibrant economy and to small businesses. For those watching, if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. Let's start with Valerie Redhorse Mole, co-chair of the American Sustainable Business Network. Valerie?
Thank you so much, Frank. It's just a real honor to be here today, and I want to start by quickly introducing America's Sustainable Business Network. ASBN represents over 250,000 businesses across our networks, and we work to develop and advocate solutions that support an equitable, regenerative, and just economy for all. And back to you, Frank.
Thank you, Valerie. And regarding the American Sustainable Business Network, I know it's recently been a combination of two organizations, and the reason why ASBN is involved in this effort.
Well, you know, the real problem, Frank, with voting rights is not so much fraud. Our data very clearly shows that it's the participation. Too many eligible voters simply don't vote. And when anything further restricts access, it disproportionately affects our small business owners, especially those who work long hours, those who work 2 jobs, those who might not be able to afford childcare. And for me, especially, I'm of Cherokee heritage, I'm Native American. We also know that this especially affects our communities of color. And so we need to protect our voting rights. And these measures, I believe, move us back to an inclusive democracy.
Thank you, Valerie. Let's turn it over to Shonda now. Shonda Coster is co-executive director of Main Street Alliance. Shonda?
Thank you, Frank. Yes, I am Shonda Coster, the executive director of Main Street Alliance, and we organize small business owners across the country on a number of key issues, including anti-monopoly, capital access, tax fairness, the care economy, and racial justice overall. Without reform, small businesses that believe in a version of investments will be drowned out by a sea of corporate lobbying money. We must seize this opportunity to finally pass bold, comprehensive reform that fix our political system and secure us from undue influence, whether foreign interference or excessive domestic corporate money. As we look to preserve and strengthen our democracy, a minority of senators, oh, that's a nice hand there, John. A minority of senators should not have the ability to block legislation, as they did on 4 separate occasions last year. That would stop political corruption, protect the right to vote, or prevent politicians from partisan and gerrymandering, which oftentimes appears racist. Main Street Alliance supports rule changes that carve democracy reform bills out from the Senate filibusters and allow them to be debated and move to a simple majority vote. We have an opportunity to transform our political system into one that realizes the true promise of democracy, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We need lasting structural change to reassure small businesses that our democracy is healthy so that we can get the business of resilient economy to recover. The Senate must do whatever it takes to pass both the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Shonda. Now let's hear from John Ahrens, Meyer, founder and CEO of Small Business Majority. John?
Thank you, Frank, and thanks to all the other organizations joining with us in this effort. Small Business Majority is a national small business organization. We empower America's diverse entrepreneurs to build a thriving and equitable economy. We have a network of over 85,000 small businesses and over 1,500 business and other partner organizations we work with daily. We are in regular contact with small businesses on a daily basis. We do extensive webinars and other events, and we obviously engage in advocacy around a number of areas: access to capital, healthcare, paid leave, equitable competition, and many other areas. A top concern of small business owners is the lack of a level playing field. We hear this again and again. 78% of small businesses in a recent poll we did said government does not pay enough attention to their needs and concerns. And almost all of those saying that government officials are either too influenced by special interests or primarily care about large businesses. Big businesses and the wealthy have an unfair advantage in our political process, leading to extreme inequities for small businesses, whether that's access to capital, the overwhelming power of tech platforms, economic development, government contracting, franchising, et cetera. All of these disparities are heightened for small businesses in under-resourced communities, particularly businesses owned by people of color and women. And these disparities have been heightened even further by the pandemic. Let's face it, a truly competitive economy that's good for businesses across the country and for consumers is reliant upon an equitable democracy. Small business owners have the freedom to pursue the American dream, but that dream can't exist for everyone unless all citizens have the ability to participate in the elections without barriers. Indeed, elections determine freedom to access to governmental support, aid and relief. And of course, we've seen this particularly during the pandemic. When small businesses experience barriers to that support from government, it undermines their ability to grow and expand their business. We also know that research shows that 3/4 of small business owners support expanding voting rights. So we support efforts to ensure voting rights for all, including reinstituting the key provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Essentially, Small Business Majority supports whatever we can get across the line. And if that involves carving out the filibuster to get something done, we support that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your words. As I said before, I'm Small Business for America's Future. I'm the co-chair of that organization. It's a national coalition of small business owners and leaders working to provide small business a voice at the level, at every level of government. All businesses, not just small businesses, the owners know that they are only successful when there is demand for their goods and services. When democracies die, consumers will feel downtrodden because their government is no longer responsive to the will of the voters. And these consumers will hold back their spending for fear of the future. Entrepreneurs are optimists who believe that if they have a good idea and work hard and sacrifice, that they can be successful and make a good living for themselves and their families. When democracy dies, the autocrats and their deep-pocketed friendly big businesses will dictate what businesses will be successful and sap the will of entrepreneurs who drive our local, state, and national economies. Small businesses flourish when government policies create a level playing field, just as John has said, for all businesses, large and small. Small business owners want government policies to not favor the corporate elite on taxes or allow corporate greed to bleed them of their ability to make a profit. When democracy dies, the uber wealthy and multinational corporations will never pay their fair share for the government services they use. And the greed of money-hungry giant corporations will run rampant, taking more and more market share from small businesses and driving up their costs of doing business. Small business owners can see into the future, and they know what will happen to them and the economy if democracy dies. And that is why they overwhelmingly support passing the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We want our democracy to be protected from those who only seek personal power and will do anything to achieve that end, even if it means destroying our democracy and small business entrepreneurial economy. Now, I have some questions for our speakers. So Valerie, why are you personally so passionate about voting rights, especially as related to business owners and in particular, business owners from communities of color?
Well, thank you, Frank. You know, a couple of things. I've dedicated my life to racial equity. And as John mentioned, we have a lot of work to do around the wealth gap and equity in finance. I'm the co-founder of Known Holdings and the CFO of East Bay Community Foundation, where I work on that every single day. But what I see is that this is a very, very big problem. And as a Native American, I am especially sensitive to democracy and to voices being silenced. And so I just want to add to this discussion the point I made before about how we're affected, you know, disproportionately anytime rights are restricted around voting rights. But the other point is when we think about these two bills, the Freedom to Vote and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Bill, you know, there's these outdated Senate rules that are blocking even the debate, you know, the permission of the debate around this. And I don't support any silencing of any voices in any way. And so again, it comes back to those of us that have been marginalized, those of us that have been underrepresented, again, continuing to be underrepresented. And so we have to stand up, once again, we have to stand up for democracy. And it again affects our small business owners, it affects our communities of color. And if we're going to address an inclusive economy for all, this is all part of it. It's not a silo. So that's why I'm passionate about it.
Thank you, Valerie. Shonda, why is this issue not just about race?
Thank you for the question, Frank. It's not just about race, though race is the heart of like how our capitalist system and our society have always set up. When you think about those who are being marginalized, it's mostly Black people, brown people, and poor people. And if we continue to silo those groups, we don't have a true democracy that represent the things that I talked about in the outset, that our small business owners want to address monopoly in this country. We want to address tax fairness. We want to change the opportunities for capital access so that brown people, Black people, and marginalized groups can have the funds that they need to start their small businesses and improve our healthcare, because it takes the burden off small business backs. So if we continue to not have a frame or not have an opportunity or address the fabric of our democracy through Voting Rights Act, we're not going to achieve many of those things. So it isn't just about race, it's about democracy, but it also is about race, because that's the legacy of how our capitalist system set up.
Thank you, Shonda. Hey, John, what are you hearing from small business owners about their role in the political process?
Yeah, Frank, I mean, it's a real problem. And I cited the statistic that 74% of small business owners feel, 78% of small business owners actually feel disconnected from the process. They feel their voices aren't being heard. And this has been particularly problematic during the pandemic. We've just had a surge of interest from businesses wanting to connect with government, wanting to make sure government's listening to them. And of course, this problem is, as Shonda mentioned, is even more extreme in under-resourced communities, particularly communities of color. And so this is a big problem. The small businesses just don't feel they want to be involved. They want to be connected, and they don't feel the government is listening to them. They feel the government's in the hands of the special interests. One other thing I want to add about their view of government, I can guarantee you this: we have never once heard from a single business owner that they care about an arcane Senate rule. We don't hear the word bipartisan, which bipartisan is fine, don't get me wrong. They want to get things done. Small business owners, by their very nature, are people who have organized their lives and their economic future to get things done. And all they see in Washington is things aren't getting done. So, they could care less about some arcane rule. They want to get things done, and they want to get this voting rights bill done.
Thank you, John. We don't have any questions right now. Do we have any other final words from any of our speakers?
I want to make one other comment that we might not have thought about. As I have worked on access to capital, we have found an interesting bias in our study of bias, that there is actually geographic bias in America with access to capital. So, New York and Silicon Valley and Seattle are all hubs of easy access to capital, but the South and sort of the interior, much harder. And when I look at the voting rights, the South has been also disproportionately affected, and our communities of color in the South really need to be supported, and our business owners. What's happening is just extreme geographic bias. And I just want to hold that up, because we need to also address that bias and really work towards democracy for all. We cannot allow that.
Very good. Thank you very much, Valerie. Any other final
Can I
words?
respond to what Valerie's lifted up? I really, you can't stop me, Frank. I'm still going for it. Valerie, I love what you lift up, because I just want to just kind of put a fine point on this, because it's not, sometimes people wow, this just is happenstance, but like your spotlight on the America Southeast, I believe that you were lifted up. It's like a legacy, like a continuous legacy from slavery to Jim Crow to the American prisons complex. So it's not even just asking marginalized groups to support small businesses. Those people are all small business owners and entrepreneurs too. So it really takes the collective whole to say that we demand to have a free and fair democracy, and voting rights is just the start of ensuring that.
Thank you, Shonda. Okay. Without any other comments or questions, thank you for joining us today. We must win this fight. To all small business owners watching or listening, raise your voice. This is a critical issue. So I encourage you, please get involved to protect your democracy and your economy. Now, this video is going to be available for anybody who wants to view it later. We'll be putting out a statement here in a bit with a link to it. If you have a question or can't find that statement, please contact one of the speakers here with our organizations, and we will make sure that you get a copy of that link to it. So thank you very much for participating. I'm Frank Knapp, and that concludes our press event. Thank you very much.